Hello, everybody. It is me, GamePang21, and today, oh boy, it's that time of the year where we take a look back at the whole catch-up situation. Not catch-up as in like that, but catch-up as in I just decided to pull out some random tweets that I happen to have on my hard drive because I'm doing some hard drive cleaning for the new year, and these were the ones that I wanted to talk about. So there are going to be a lot of random tweets because we're going to be doing topic parkour again in terms of this, because I need a video and content this week because being a YouTuber is weird. There's probably going to be a Thursday video because I'm not going to do that, so Happy New Year, everyone. I'm not posting a video like the 31st and then posting a video in the new year for that because I'm taking at least a week off from doing this. But in any case, we're going to first, you can tell I haven't recorded a video in a couple weeks. In any case, with that being said, if you like what it is I do, want to support me in any other way, shape, or form other than a like and subscribe, which is always enough, link down in the description for everything below. But let's get started, of course, with Porter Rock 77. Talking about how this dude, Blessed Rhodes, does not understand that Valve creating a console to sell in the console space would now make them a competitor to Sony and the PlayStation brand. He's having trouble with this concept. Now, originally when I looked at this, I'm like, I guess that he does have some components in some point here, but I don't think that Valve would specifically make something like a console that would compete with the other ones, just like how Nintendo is more neutral ground as well in terms of the quote-unquote console war. The only reason why Nintendo doesn't get a lot of the other exclusives or other stuff like that is because their hardware isn't as powerful as certain other hardwares on the market right now. And they realize this, but they play into it. They just have a lot of good exclusives, a lot of good games, and normally a lot of good gobbledygook. I was going to say quality control. Normally, not always. But the more that I thought about it, the more that I realized they wouldn't necessarily be a competitor, but they would at the same time, not a hard competitor, as it were, because in the space of marketing and in the space of your market in general, it's almost like there are different levels of competitorness. And I don't want to go too much into it, but just basically know that there are 3 different levels where it's general market, adjacent, and strict. Those aren't the actual names of it. I forget the names specifically, but I took a marketing class on this, and I should know the names, but damn it, I haven't been in school in a bit. But you know what I mean. There are 3 different levels where there's like direct ones, then there's adjacent ones, and there's ones in the general market that usually fall under like more, it gets more general as you go down in levels. That's really all you need to know. So wouldn't necessarily be a hard competitor, but might be a soft competitor. Next up here, we have a small section on Endymion, because Endymion decided to make a video on Grand Theft Auto 6 bowing down to the woke agenda. I have nothing to add to this other than the fact that this is Endymion and his new content and stuff. I remember I used to watch this guy back in the day when he actually was an okay commentator, YouTuber channel. Now he's this. I hate it. But of course, I really don't have to say much of anything because there was another one where he talks about CD Projekt Red, but PMS Jordan kind of summed up my whole thing with Endymion as of right now with the I just can't with this app anymore. You and me both. Been covering tweets and stuff for like over a year now. Hurts the soul. But next up was a more smaller thing that happened at the Game Awards, which was Catly. Now, if you may or may not know, Catly was that one weird, seemingly AI-generated trailer that was seemingly generated by AI and looked fucking awful, because the entire studio seems to have come under some sort of fire. Now, there isn't too much to really cover here that I have on my opinion, outside of what you've probably seen from people. But Pesci, I don't know how you pronounce that, I fucked the name up, sorry, decided to do a little research here and discovered that the game studio shown at there was done by Super Ontui, which is supposedly associated with Kevin Young, a man who has heavily promoted NFTs and stuff, which, again, a little bit concerning, but we then can switch over to Brett here, who went to the actual Steam page and talked about reading this description for the actual game. This is the official description for the game on Steam. A cat's open world with beautiful cats, hyperrealism, actions, cuddle, speed, islands, fashion, dreams, snow, robots, plants, off with all via cats. Let's just move on before my brain decides to pop another fucking vessel in it. So, yeah. Moving on to even more AI-generated slop. What a weird transition. We're going to be talking about Call of Duty again. Yeah, I talked about this again the last time I did one of these roundups, and this one's very fucking old because, again, this one was last month. But apparently, they decided to not only release some promotional art for generative AI, but also, apparently, generative AI for an actual emblem that you can buy in the game. Yeah. Looking at this, it's like the circuit board kind of looks and if you know anything about circuit boards, you know that this kind of looks a little bit fucked up. But also, I want to draw your attention to the controller that seems to be having some sort of weird midlife crisis. Yeah. Who thought that this was like a good thing? Like, who looks at that, right, and says, yes, print it? Like, what the fuck? Moving on here, Cerberus XT talks about people fixing the actual thing for, I believe this is Naughty Dog's new game, which got a lot of flack for it, because apparently it's woke and very much so stupid, which I have really nothing to add to that, and I don't care. But I find it really weird how the two sides that I look at this are both dumb in their own respectful way. But the people like Cerberus saying gamers are racist because they're doing this is dumb. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're doing it for the meme, or they're doing it to get your goat. I don't know. I usually err on the side of this person's just memeing. But the people on the other side that actually do mean this are also really stupid because it's art at the end of the day. If you don't like the art, don't participate in the art or don't get the art, which I know that sounds like someone saying, oh, don't buy it. It's like, yeah, I mean that. Don't actually buy it, because I mean that in a more genuine way of just saying, I don't like it. Sure. But Kudos here points out a very interesting thing that I didn't actually realize until he pointed it out, saying, you put a female protagonist in a video game 20 years ago, no one cared and everyone was fine with it. You make a female protagonist in 2024 and people start crying because their famous incel YouTuber told you it's woke and you must hate everything. Keep getting gaslit for clicks. Now, I'm not sure if that's specifically what that means, but I do agree that the mentality towards, like, at least these sorts of female protagonists has kind of went in a weird direction, because most people, at least the ones that are mostly the grifters 99% of the time, are the people that will call out anything that has a female protagonist woke. Synthetic man. But at the same time, it's not like they're listening to everyone for that. It's just very strange how the times before you could have like a female protagonist and be fine, like for Tomb Raider or even the reboot of Tomb Raider and a few other games that I can't really think of off the top of my head. But you can have enough female protagonists today, and it's not as seen as like, oh, a very strong and independent thing, because it's lost its luster, I guess. Because I guess at the time it wasn't. It's just, it's weird. Art is art, and art will always get criticized by people who are dumb. But of course, there was also more Naughty Dog news with The Last of Us Part 2 coming to Steam. I'm fairly certain that everyone and their mother called this because they had Part 1, which, again, if you've seen anything for God of War and God of War Ragnarok, yeah. But Kristen Henders here says, being a fan of The Last of Us is goddamn tiring sometimes, with more criticisms coming out from this from Mortal Kombat here with a nobody cares about The Last of Us 2 Remastered. A multiplayer mode would be the only news people care about at this point regarding The Last of Us 2, which, unfortunately, that got canned. Oops. but also solid Mike here with a, come on, Sony is really dropping the ball with these goddamn remasters coming to PC. Is there anything new coming to the goddamn PS4, PS5? Not 4. Yeah, dyslexia. But, I mean, there was some of the games that were announced at the Game Awards, and now no one's really talking about it because they don't like it. It's really bad. But now we have someone who seems to be becoming a recurring character back in these things with Pure PlayStation here, saying, name that game with a hot take, it's Forspoken, with how popular it is versus how good it is. The game failed so hard that it got the studio basically absorbed back into the main studio. It was that bad. Anyway, KJ Gamer here saying, dude is so hurt that Astrobot won Gotti, where basically Clute here lists off the bunch of different games that had won Game of the Year over the past several years, talking about how Astrobot only sold about 1.5 million copies, which is great considering where it was, because it's a PlayStation exclusive and it's one of those games that was like smaller and less expensive. So the fact that it sold like 1.5 million, good for Astrobot. They definitely deserve it because it's a great game. But it is interesting to point out that it is one of the lowest selling nominees and one of the lowest selling winners, I guess, of all time when you put it up against everything else. But you also have to factor into the fact that most of the other ones here, except for, I guess, God of War and Zelda Breath of the Wild, as well as maybe one more. I think It Takes Two. No, I think that was on a couple other platforms. But definitely God of War and Zelda were ones that were super low. Well, no, not super low, but ones that were also exclusives. I don't know if the God of War numbers are updated to include the PC port, or if it includes just the numbers at the time. But it's just it's just pretty insane that like that's still like the smallest number. And again, it's a very interesting thing to point out. It's weird, but whatever. I just think it's a very interesting meme. But it's like, oh yeah, he's super mad and salty, and I'm in a console war game about it. So yeah. Next up here, Tom Warren talking about the Microsoft CEO, quoting about how they're redefining the Xbox brand, which pretty solid strategy, I guess. We'll see how it goes, Cotton. With Excited here saying, at what point do we just settle with the fact that people don't want gaming to grow? They want it to be stagnant within their own personal vision and bias. $1 trillion company knows less than we do, I guess. Which, no, they don't. And I think that it is interesting to point out that a lot of the people who are calling for, oh, don't do this, or oh, blah, 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 this is a bad business decision for things like the PlayStation guys, at the very least specifically, are the ones that really want gaming to, quote, be stagnant and just, develop games for stuff, despite the fact that there is, at a time when the market shifts to other things that may or may not exist because they make a lot of fucking money. Like, again, Microsoft is still in business because they make a lot of fucking money, and they make things that maybe people don't agree with all the time, but at the same time, not defending them, there does have to be an adjustment because Microsoft kind of screwed themselves over during the Xbox One era, which they're still kind of feeling the effects of. So, yeah. I have nothing else to say on that other than let gaming grow and let people make decisions, and if they fail, they fail. This was one interesting one that I wanted to talk about, where the developers of Hypercharge, which I talked about a little bit earlier this year, where they didn't seem to handle the greatest of criticism, but they handled it about as well as I would appreciate them to do. But they talked about how they're eventually coming to PlayStation 5 with their recent release of it, but then being like just 6 developers. But going through these tweets here, we have Majin Dev here with we wanted to play this months ago, and now constantly how great you were doing, and we got Sparkling Zero and Rivals now. We eaten just fine without it, my guy. You can keep it. With Hypercharge coming in with a fairly decent rebuttal with a, damn, that stings. It's tough pouring your heart into something and getting this kind of response. It's deflating, man. We are not a big team. We are 5 indie devs, around 6, and don't want to rush launch. To all PlayStation fans who are still with us, we see you and appreciate you. where Demon Flow kind of sums up the whole situation in a very neat and tidy bow here, with Sony fanboys gang up on Hypercharge developers because they released their game on Xbox first. This is an indie studio with run by about 6 devs. Ponies continue to be the most despicable beings on X confirmed. And yeah, it wasn't just Majin Dev, it was a bunch of like the super toxic PlayStation fanboys that you would see, including JTech TV, where JTech basically put the same thing, and I think this is the same one here, where it says, explain the PlayStation community why they are the last to get your game years after it released in 2020, despite the fact that this says it was released on June 2017 in early access, which is clearly stated in the actual post that you screenshotted, where it was released into early access on Steam and was released on Nintendo Switch and Windows in 2020, and in 2024 was released on Xbox, with 2025 seeming to be the release for PlayStation. It's almost like they have to get approval from the companies in order to do that. But if you are this bent out of shape about getting if you are this bent out of shape about getting this game, why is it that you weren't upset that you were the last one to get crossplay when Minecraft happened? You know? Because Minecraft was a game that, at least for the Bedrock Edition, you could crossplay to everything. Phone, Xbox, Switch, and your PC. But you couldn't do that to, say, the PlayStation until, like, years later, because PlayStation didn't care. Why are you upset that this game's coming to your platform late and not upset that crossplay wasn't coming to your platform late? It's just strange. But a quick update on the Katakawa situation, which we haven't talked about in a little bit here, with J-Dub talking about how Elden Ring is now a Sony first-party studios game. Let the tears flow. Sony believes in exclusions. Hashtag PlayStation. Hashtag From Software. And I don't know if you can specifically see that screenshot because it might be a little bit of an I'll just like zoom in on this. But basically, GameIndustry.biz decided to report on the news that they didn't actually buy out Katakawa. They just became the biggest investor. How much did they actually invest into the company? 10%. That's it. Just 10%. Meaning that there's another 90% that is probably owned by other companies. I don't know if all of them would agree with Sony that exclusives work, despite the fact that they might construe numbers to do that behind closed doors. And you're taking this as win and saying that it is a Sony first-party games studio, despite the fact that it's Katakawa, which is an anime company, and they own a lot more than just From Software. So what the fuck's the problem? It's real weird how you can take that and just, like, run it on down to the bank. Noir kind of called this, talking about how, they don't have Sony acquiring From Software, and they don't have enough money to acquire From Software. So, yeah. Again, they didn't have enough money, so they just bought into that. But Pure PlayStation coming back in here with saying, big news! Sony will get a seat on the Katakawa board. Cool. Talking about in this checklist here, weren't people saying that holding on to 10% of Katakawa shares wouldn't give PlayStation anything tangible? I mean, they probably did it as like a courtesy and during the contracts that they were negotiating with, so I guess. I definitely see Sony slowly taking over the entirety of Katakawa and the huge library of gaming and anime IP over the next 3 years. Oh no. It's not like their value of that company can only go up and they price tag get more and more and more expensive for that purchase to maybe happen. And in 3 years, a lot can happen. They might even just go bankrupt, maybe. Talk about how don't be surprised the next From Software game is exclusive to PlayStation 5. I mean, they might get more talks about, say, a Bloodborne 2, which I'm still holding out hope for. Just, gotta huff that copium, but still. Like, the next From Software game being a PlayStation 5 exclusive, how much sway does Kadokawa actually hold over From Software? Because Kadokawa's been kind of just letting From Software do From Software things, and who knows, maybe they might eventually decide to leave because the company, or like, not the company, but the main dev, I keep fucking his name, I'm sorry, but Miyazaki came in and was like, and has said, like, if I could go independent, I would, which he might within the next 3-ish years. But Nicola, I'm not a PlayStation fanboy. Marshall, I guess, with the benefits of a PlayStation 5 Portal Pro on the Portal, where he then again has to basically just show that the PlayStation 5 Portal is still a worthy investment, despite the fact that, again, you mostly need a PS5 to access a lot of his stuff, or a lot of the stuff there, where, yeah, they did offer, like, I think, cloud-saved system to it, but it still is an inferior device when you compare it to everything else. And comparing it to everything else in terms of the prices, what Zubby Tech does, where you have a whole bunch of listed here of stuff, which, okay, cool, which the Steam Deck is still at least taking up 3 of these spots and is still fairly cheap when you actually compare everything together, which I think that he was, PlayStation Portal is always at the top because it's the best here. But, yeah. Blue here coming in with an interesting thing, talking about how J-Dub can't play games on the PS4 era, so he doesn't get with the PC gamers do. Where Icon Era replied with a very weird and interesting article that most people, like only 15% of all Steam users, spent playing games released in 2024. And I'm fairly certain that maybe about like a few percentage points of those, maybe like 2%. I don't even know, maybe even not that. But I'm fairly certain a percentage of that was definitely people playing the finals. At least that was me playing the finals a lot because it was released in 2020. No, it was released in 2023, actually. Regardless, this only points out that people were playing games that were only released, that there was a small percentage of people playing games that were released in 2024. And then J-Dub comes in with, like, all the people talking about for $5,000 fancy lights and blah, 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 blah. Like, dude, modern games aren't as enticing to people as they once were, because not all modern games are good. Like, that's the thing. The 15% of the games that were there were the ones that people actually liked and appreciated, the ones that other people decided to go back and play. And these are just, again, Steam numbers, so it's not a reflection of everything, but it kind of shows, like, maybe don't. So, yeah. Coming in here with a Delusional Takes tweet, which I have not talked about, which I kind of wanted to, because Delusional Takes is one of those channels that you look at and you're like, maybe I should do a video on that, because there's some really good stuff in there, but a lot of it's political, and I don't like to get political on this channel, but if you guys want it, I'll do a video on it. But Spectral comes in here with a saying that even for Tanga, who is the biggest anti-woke guy there's a lot of other ones, is admitting that he was wrong about Indiana Jones, and that this isn't a delusional take, where the person saying that this person deserves massive apologies, which they kind of do, but kind of don't. It's kind of in the middle area. It's not saying that it has nothing to do with the quote-unquote modern audience that may or may not exist, but it's not to say that this wasn't the best game. It was definitely a very adequate and serviceable game for what it was. A lot of people talk about how there wasn't a lot of, like, time to money in terms of this, as in, like, the campaign seemed to be a little bit short. Maybe they're working on some DLC or something like that. That would be cool, but it was just a very good Indiana Jones game movie tie-in, which, as movie tie-ins go, if you have a good one, you have a great one, especially with a title like this, because there's been a lot of good stuff in there. But of course, we're going to round this off with 2 more things here, talking about, of course, Zubby Tech Pro, saying, are we not seeing the full picture of the handheld gaming market or an extended exclusive success? Asus, Lenovo, Steam, and MSI have not disclosed the sales. It's highly unlikely any of these handhelds sold over 10 million. As of today, Nintendo is the only successful manufacturer in the handheld gaming market. Maybe. But to be fair, the Nintendo Switch has been on the market for the longest time, talking about how none of these consoles apparently sold over 10 million. Steam does not have to actually disclose their value because they're not a publicly traded company. So, yeah. As for the other ones, I'm not sure if they're publicly traded as either. Some of them might be, some of them might not be. But they don't have to disclose the numbers if they don't want to. Maybe they're waiting until like next year to disclose it, or maybe they disclose it sort of in the fiscal year, which is vastly different in terms of sales numbers and whenever that happens. But I mean, the PlayStation Portal is still there, and people are still buying it, apparently. I still don't think it's a great investment, but whatever. But to finally round off this video and to round off the rest of this year and my catch-up period, we have Just Dan. What went wrong with the critically and usually acclaimed title, which may considered the Gotti this year, is currently being played as the most currently played single player on Xbox. The fact that useless accounts like these are able to brainwash so many is as indignant of our online society. Couldn't have put it better myself. And I'm not talking about Pirate Nation in this context. I'm talking about all the salty fanboys that continuously complain and bitch and moan and whine and everything. But yeah, looking forward to this year. Really hope that I can still put out videos for you guys despite my work situation and things like that. I do think that overall, this right here, everything that has to do with all these fanboys, just for fun. And at the end of the day, my channel is trying to say, don't be like this. Use these as examples to do better. And to not play Twitter, specifically. Go outside and touch some grass. Anyway, Happy New Year, everyone. My name is GamePenguin21. If you like what it is that I do, want to support me in any other way, shape, or form, other than like and subscribe, which is always enough. Links down to everything in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching. And again, have a Happy New Year.